Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning out there in Blog Talk Radio land. As usual, it takes so many things I do in the morning as I get ready for the show. I'm telling you, I give myself an hour to get ready before I get ready to kick off and go live. But want to welcome you guys to, this is the beginning of August. I hope you are examining what you've done so far in your life as far as your goals this year and what it is you want to get done, because time definitely does not wait for us. This is August the 10th already. I feel like I was just saying it's the very beginning of August. We are, before you know it, going to be in the middle of August. But want to welcome you to Off the Shelf, and you are absolutely listening to the Winning Book Radio Show, Off the Books Talk Radio here at Blog Talk Radio. You can catch us so many places online and offline. And for those who are just tuning in or you're hopping over, it's a Saturday morning, maybe you're doing your house cleaning, you're looking for some entertainment while you start your morning, there is still time for you to catch Off the Shelf before we introduce our awesome guest this morning. The listener dial-in, you can tell your friends, your neighbors, there is still time. You won't miss this great guest if you connect now. The listener dial-in is 347-994-3490. Again, that's 347-994-3490. You can also connect to Off the Shelf via our chat room, and or just click on over into Off the Shelf so many ways. But again, that listener dial-in is 347-994-3490. And this is the thought I want to leave with you as we go into this amazing show, and I think you're really going to enjoy today's guest. But the thought is, great things never come from comfort zones. And don't we want to be comfortable? Great things never come from comfort zones. Something just to marinate on today as you go through your day. And Off the Shelf listeners, I want to ask you a question. How good of a mystery sleuth are you? Do you think you can finger the person who's responsible for the murder mystery that cloaks Raymond and his best friend's life? Raymond goes off to college, and he has this 4 friends. They stay friends for life, forever. But there is a murder mystery. Something happens as soon as Raymond leaves home and goes to college. How involved is he in this murder? So are you somebody who can figure out who did it? There's already 2 people at campus that you might want to keep your eye on. That's one thing to love about Love Pour Over Me, and you can go get yourself a copy of Love Pour Over Me right now from Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, ebook it, you name it. It's in print and ebook, so you have 2 different options for you to choose from to get Love Pour Over Me, however you want to read and enjoy it. But also, how much do you value relationships? There is a true soulmate relationship for the romantic, for the person who really believes in that type of love. I mean, you have a deep belief in it, and you really want it. You're going to get that. You are going to get that in Love Pour Over Me. And lastly, there's a complicated father-son relationship, and there are probably millions of those, if not more, in the world, even as we speak, that affect families, that affect those soulmate relationships. If those 3 things are important to you, I really, really encourage you to stop what you're doing and get a copy of Love Pour Over Me now. And now I'm going to connect our guest for this morning. But first, I want to introduce her before she comes on live this morning. And our special off-the-shelf guest this morning is June Ahern. Now, June is a life coach, author, and public speaker. She tours the country on book tours, events that she enlivens with her sense of humor. And books that June has written include The Timeless Counselor, A Guide to a Successful Psychic Reading, City of Redemption, and The Sky in June. She seems to have this gift, and honestly, I think we'll let her talk about it, but I think a lot of people have it, or all, but we just close it off. Now, although born in Glasgow, Scotland, June grew up in San Francisco. Please visit June Ahern online at juneahern.com, and that is JUNEAHERN.com. 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 You can go over there. See, this is one thing I love about the internet. You can go over to her website, June, JUNEAHERN, now, and check out her website and her books and her bio, and also listen to her share things she's learned, things about her journey, about her books, as you listen to this Off the Shelf Books Talks radio interview. We are so delighted to have June with us this morning. Welcome to Off the Shelf, June.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm always up running around. I don't care how early I get up. I'm just doing so much promoting the show and different things in the morning and also before the show yesterday and before the show starts. But it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us on Off the Shelf this morning. The first few questions I ask every single guest, because I used to just go right into the questions about the books. And listeners told me, Denise, we want to know a little bit about the guest before you go right into the questions about the books. So I ask these first 4 or 5 questions to every single guest who comes on the show. So to kick it off, June, could you please tell off-the-shelf listeners what it was like for you growing up in Glasgow, Scotland?
Well, I came to America when I was 6, so I only have very important events that I recall from Glasgow. One of them is we used to call our backyards. You know, we lived in a apartment building we called them close, CLOSE, and in there was the washroom. You know, this is before electrical washers, you know, and all that. And I remember going back there and sitting on a bucket, an upside down bucket, where my older siblings told me rats lived under it.
Ooh.
I don't know what this is so funny as an adult, but just jumping up and running out of that little washroom, you know. So what I remember mostly is family, being with my family, how close I felt to my sisters and brothers, my mother there. When I think of Glasgow, my time in Glasgow, it always revolves around my family and the kitchen. And my mother telling us stories. She'd make up stories, and we would just sit there, and she would tell us stories. So it's a really warm feeling that I have when I think about Glasgow, my time in Glasgow.
Do you remember it? Can you, describe it? What state in the United States, is it wide open? Is it a countryside?
Glasgow is a city. It's a well-known one of the sayings is, if you can make it on stage in Glasgow, you can make it anywhere in the world. So when a client asked me to come back to New York City and see clients, because, you know, for many years I had a very successful business as a psychic medium. I'm retired now from that. But I said, listen, I'm from Glasgow. I'll do okay in New York City.
Oh.
And I did. I did really well. I love New Yorkers. I have to tell you, I get them, and I just have a really great time when I come back to New York. So Glasgow is known to be like a tough town, you know. And
interesting.
It's tough. Even now, people, if you watch any of the BBCs or anything, when they mention Glasgow, their eyebrows kind of go up. Oh, they're from Glasgow.
Ah.
And you know, it was bombed during Second World War. So they started to rebuild it. Now it's a kind of a cultural city, but it's definitely it's right on the River Clyde. So there's a lot of ships that go in and out. So not so much anymore, but it was a shipping town. You know, my father actually worked down at the ships.
Interesting. So then compare that to San Francisco, because that's where you really spent, you know, the other part of your childhood and your teenage years. How different was that? And why did your family come from, leave Glasgow and come to the United States?
Well, I'll tell you something. I love San Francisco. It's changed, of course, like every place has changed. It's a beautiful city. My father is I'm from a Catholic family, and very staunch Catholics. And Catholics didn't do well in Scotland, and so they really could not get the majority of them. I cannot speak for everyone. I don't like to say that I speak for everyone, but the majority of them could not get decent paying jobs. There was a great prejudice against Catholics. They were attacked. Think about Northern Ireland now, the Protestants and the Catholics. The Catholics are what you would call economically on the lower rung. And so he left for a year. He came over to San Francisco. He had some friends from from Glasgow living there. So they sponsored him, and he was looking for work. I mean, the bottom line is it was all about making a better life for his family economically. So that's why he came to San Francisco, because actually it was a family of his best friends. The 4 of the men had come to San Francisco for the same reason. So my mother was left with 7 of her children on her own for a year. And then she brought us all over. She was a tremendous woman, lovely, gentle woman. You would call her a gentle woman. And she brought us all over to San Francisco. I remember the plane ride over, and I'm talking plane. We're not doing jets here. And,
okay.
Landing in New York. It was long. I remember that ride. I remember the bus ride to the airport and my grandparents coming and everybody crying. They gave me a hanky. I remember getting this big white hanky, and I didn't understand. I was 6 years old. Like, why is everybody crying? Well, when you left in those days, you didn't go back easy. When you left your home, you left your home.
Right.
Now we get on a plane. I go visit. I plan a trip. I get on the plane. I go back and see my relatives. But then it was like, can we go back? Can we afford to go back? How long will it take? So that's why we came to San Francisco, for a better life.
Interesting with everything going on with immigration now, globally, in a lot of different countries. And, to hear what you're saying, and, so many years, they say the United States is like a country of immigrants. We know the indigenous people, the Native Americans, they were here first, and nobody even considers that, but it is people just from other countries. It's always been that way, and everybody comes, they go where they think they can have a better life.
Yeah, and that's why when people begin to talk the way that some people, negatively about these people, I said, I am one of those people. I'm a naturalized citizen. I became a citizen under my parents because they became citizens. I was 11 years old before I was a citizen of the United States. My eldest sister, she was too old. She had to go and become a citizen on her own. So, and fitting in, we did speak English, but we spoke English in a way that almost nobody understood us. It's real heavy Glasgow accent. And I really do get it. I get the prejudice and racism, and I get it. And although I'm white, and I got a big white red face and everything, I get it.
Right. Now, it hurts
my heart.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, and hopefully it will turn. We will remember that most of the country, you think Native Americans, beyond that, immigrants or people brought over as slaves. Is most of your family still today in Scotland or San Francisco? I know you said you and all your parents and your siblings came over, but your extended family, are they still in Scotland, or did they all?
All of them. All of them.
Okay.
We left our grandparents and our cousins, our aunties, our uncles. We left everybody. And so growing up here, we didn't have. Maybe that's why we were so close. We were very close family. So we would make friends, cousins. And in my day, you called adults either auntie or uncle. You didn't call them by their first name. So they became our family here.
So how often do you get back? And then I want to ask you about your dreams when you were a kid. So do you go back? Do you go back there? Do you go back home?
Yeah. Yes, I go back. Yeah, I go back. I haven't been for a while, and I'm overdue, as my cousins keep telling me on Facebook. When are you coming back? When are you coming back? And I keep saying next year, and I just haven't yet. So it's been about 12 years since I've been back, which is way overdue.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's way overdue. And my sisters, I have sisters and brothers and nieces and nephews. They've all gone back. You know, so I'm lagging in my visit to my relatives, and oh my God, they're so much fun. They're crazy.
Wow. Now, you said you worked as a psychic medium, but when you were a child, what did you dream of becoming when you were a kid? What did you say, when I grow up, I want to be?
Well, I wanted to be a veterinarian, for one thing. I love animals, still love animals. Though they do annoy me, I have to say. But I love animals. So I saw myself as a veterinarian. And then my mother, I always made funny faces and acted. So she said, you should be an actress, you know, and I always laughed. So it was a veterinarian that I had focused on. My father was old school, and his idea that you didn't send girls to school because they only got married and had babies. So when I got out of high school, I was told, just get a job. You're not going to college. So that dream kind of just went away.
Oh,
but I do have a niece that's a veterinarian. Yeah, that was an old working class school thought, you know, idea.
Interesting. So you wanted to be a better veterinarian. And then I want to ask you, how then did you, before we go into your books, because you talk about a little bit of this in your books, how did you go on to become a psychic medium? Did you have several experiences that happened to you, like you knew things, and you're like, how do I know this? And then that took off from there?
Well, I did. I was interested. My mother used to read our tea leaves. Of course, we could not tell the nuns. Like I said, we were strict Catholics, you know. She would read the tea leaves, and she was a lot of fun that way. And then I had a very serious automobile accident as a young adult. And after I came out of that accident, I went through the windshield, and I came back in, and on my way to the ambulance, I had a near-death experience. And when I came back, I began to know things about people, things that I've never met, people I don't know. And I began to see visions. I actually, not right after the accident, more later on, a few years later, I actually saw a person that had passed, showed up to me, scared the bejeevers out of me. I mean, I was not prepared for all the stuff that happened. I really thought I was maybe going like I was crazy, you know. And in those days, you know, who are you going to tell? Oh, I went to the other side and I saw it. You just didn't talk about it then. So
wow. So how old were you? How old were you? You said again when this happened?
I was 19. I was about. Boy, I came to America in March, and I had my accident in March. So I was almost 20. Yeah. Yeah, it was and it left me with serious scars on my face at the time. And over the years, you know, my face filled out, so the scars aren't as noticeable unless I'm tired. So I had a lot of changes. A 19-year-old woman with scars, and then realizing that she knows things different. It was a difficult time of my life, very, very difficult. But
so you know, when you think about this, you think somebody would welcome it. Like, oh, God, you get to know things before they happen. You can plan your life out better. That's what you would think, because when people call, they want to know either what happened to my loved one or what's going to happen to me. Yeah. And so you're saying it wasn't that way. It wasn't like, oh, I love this.
No, I did not love it at all. I was afraid of it. I before I had my accident, within a few months before, I went to this woman. A friend told me about this woman that read the playing deck of cards. So I went to her just to see what it was like, and she predicted it all. I'd be in this terrible accident. There would be two men at my side. They would be arguing. Well, I had a somewhat boyfriend, and I had met someone else and went out with him on the sly. Talk about getting caught, right? And that's who I had the accident with, the new one, you know. And so it was. I mean, how do you explain to somebody that you know things about them that they've never told you? I mean, I could be sitting at the bus stop and somebody sit next to me and I start to know things about them. like hearing, voices telling me, and I thought, oh my God, people that hear voices, you know what they say.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
So I began to look, and I began to study tarot a few years later, and it really helped put things into balance for me. And the woman was a wonderful teacher, and she did keep me after class one day and say, you have a particular gift. You have to really look at developing it. And it answered a lot for me. She talked to me about it.
Okay. Now, how old were you when you knew that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I just like to draw and write. Actually, in the 8th grade, I won some sort of a little award for writing Coming to America. My mother was a writer. She was a poet. We used to call her a poetess, but now you call her just poet and writer. And she did it just because she loved it. She did not pursue a career in it, and she was very good. And when I, right about 1988, 89, I had a friend say to me, if you wrote a book about what people do when they come to a reading, how to find readers, what they do, what kind of questions, how to get the most out of it, a consumer's guide, it would open your career more. And I had already been doing readings since 75 and teaching classes. And I said, oh, okay, how long will that take? Being impatient. I started writing this book. I had so much help. I started handwriting it, and then a friend put it on the old computers in 1988. And I didn't plan on being a writer. Every single book I wrote was on the advice of another person. Oh, you should write this book about this. And that was my first book, and it did. I was on People Were Talking I was on radio shows. I was on television. People Are Talking. Back then, that was a very popular show. And, it was kind of an interesting time. It's like, wow, write this book, and people know that you have experience to share.
Wow. Oh my goodness. And it's sort of it seems like, I've been doing Off the Shelf for 14 years. It's amazing. Some guests' lives, they seem to almost plan them consciously. They can see where they plan things out as they happen. And then others, it just kind of flows organically under the surface. Things just happen, and it's just amazing to see how you.
It is.
As when you're living through it, I think Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, said this: when you're going through it, you don't see how it's connecting. It's not until you would either look back or somebody else looks at your life and they're like, oh, I see where all the little dots connected. But when you're living through it, you don't see it. Now, is the Sky in June, is this your first novel? And what inspired you to write that particular book?
Sky in June is my first novel. It started out as a screenplay. I wanted to tell a story about my sisters and myself and experiences that we were having, looking into paganism, looking into other ways of enjoying our spirituality. And as I said, we're very Catholic. My parents were appalled at us. And so I started writing it in a kind of an honor to my sisters. My first title of that was Catholic Girls Make Good Witches. And when I met somebody and they kind of showed me, I didn't know how to write a screenplay. What did I know? And a friend of mine, an author friend of mine who writes nonfiction, and she said to me, June, if you write this as a novel, sometimes it will be bought better as a screenplay. There's more interest. And again, I said, well, how long is that going to take? I already spent like 3 years on the screenplay. She said, oh, well, just start writing it. Rhonda, oh my God, I had such a great time. I shared it with my sisters and mother. The most memory I have is sharing it. They would come over to the house and we would read it, the dialogue and the chapters, and I'd ask my mother and my older sister, is that pretty clear to Glasgow how life was, and they could answer my questions. So although it's fiction, you like to get as close as you can to what really took place in a particular place or culture. So that's how I wrote it. I love it.
Can you give our listeners an overview of the Sky in June and introduce them to some of the characters in the book?
Yeah. So it's set mostly all in San Francisco. It opens in Scotland, and the story is just steeped in nuances of Scottish culture and language. Readers can learn some Scottish words, and it's fun. And so that's where all my main characters are born from. And then it moves during the mid-1950s, it moves to San Francisco, and it goes up to the radical days of changes in 1960. And 1960 in San Francisco, as all over the world, was really radical. So my stories weave around the city's most recognized neighborhood, and that is the Castro, as it's known now, but it's really known as Eureka Valley in San Francisco, and it sits right about in the heart of the city. It's right about in the center of it. And the great thing is readers get to go in the Castro Theater, Cliff's Variety Store. They're both still flourishing today, and they were flourishing back in the 1950s. So it's fun to learn about the neighborhood. The story is about the McDonald family, and it begins with the birth of their last child, who's a girl. And I did name her June, which I'm going to tell anybody listening, if you ever write a book, do not name it the same name as yourself, because it is a problem.
Why is that a problem?
Because people think it's
your story. Yes.
Well, people think it's an autobiography, and it's a fictional story somewhat set in a framework of an autobiography. I did take things. Like naming me June in a Catholic family was not right, because everybody's supposed to be named after a saint. So I'm the first non-saint child in the family named after, I should have been named. My middle name was Patricia, after St. Patrick.
Okay.
And so for the first 2.5 years of my life, my father called me Patricia, and my mother called me June. Anyway, so
interesting.
Oh gosh, I know. No wonder I'm a little unusual at times. So the parents are Jimmy and Kathy McDonald. He's a working class man. He's a hard worker and a hard drinker. And he wants things in his total control. Kathy is a lovely woman, but she's she's afraid of her husband. She doesn't want to upset the apple cart. And she's very distant. She actually suffers from what we know now from depression. We don't know why. The story is, why is she always kind of pulling away from the family, laying in bed, having episodes, what's wrong with her? And so a little bit it hints at it, throughout the story. It kind of hints at it. Not until the end do we really find out what is the secret. What is she holding on to that she just is causing this depression in her? And of course, Jimmy gets more and more violent. So they have the youngest daughter, who's like a beacon for unusual people coming in her life. You have Mrs. G, the downstairs Polish survivor, Jewish Polish survivor, who teaches this character, June, how to read the tarot cards because she sees her gift. And there's the sisters, Annie the eldest, and she's very much the eldest. She takes the mother's role because mother can't really hold it together. You've got Maggie, who is just like sassy and pretty, and all the boys like her, and she likes the boys. And you've got Mary. Oh, yeah, Maggie's like, here I am, and just flips her hair from side to side. and you've got Mary. And Mary's she's a gentle girl, shy, but she takes the brunt of it off her father. Like Annie the eldest, she just won't take it. She's like, I'll just ignore him. And Mary's very sensitive, and the father makes fun of her and calls her a little boy. Oh, little boy, you get that. Because she's kind of tomboyish. And so she suffers in that way. And then the youngest, June, she's feisty. She's a little redhead, and she's always in trouble. They go to school with the nuns. I don't know if any of your readers are old enough to remember going to school with the nuns and their habits and stuff. I don't have anything against the nuns. The story isn't about having anything against nuns or any religion, really. But it does use religion as a learning tool. Are you going to judge others because they're not like you? Are you going to decide that somebody's religion is better than your thoughts? That's really why I wrote the story in the beginning. I wrote the screenplay. You know, if a person's a good person, they're just a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. G, readers have told me how much they love Mrs. G that lives downstairs.
Oh.
You know, and then, they just love her. She's just a great character, and she's wise, and she's got her own psychic powers. So she helps this youngest child, June, develop this and feel comfortable. You know, and then you meet the Callahans, and they live down at the other end of the Liberty Street, Liberty and Castro. And the McDonald's get to buy a house. That's when you can actually buy a house in San Francisco. And they live up on Liberty Street up the street. And the Callahans are an unusual family because it's two women living together. And in those days, in the 50s and even the 60s, you could not be openly gay. It just wasn't going to happen. And they live in the neighborhood, and they have two children, and the two children become the McDonald's best friends, especially Brian. June and Brian become best friends, the boy. So that's some of the characters, and there's characters throughout. There's Sister Noelle, you know, she's a good character.
Your characters and the way you describe them, this is one thing I know when they tell you that the plot is great, the setting is great, but people have to care about your characters, and they have to care about what happens to them. You need a good villain in a story to keep people reading, and you need somebody that people are going to root for. Your characters, the way you describe them, they sound so intriguing and so interesting that it makes me say this got to be a good story because of the way you describe your characters. As the writer, it sounds like you're very in tune with your characters and connected to them in the story, the Sky and June. Now, when I was researching for your interview, some things popped out at me as I was doing the research, and I wanted to ask, what past sins and for our listeners, some of these answers I may know, but for our listeners, what past sins does the girl's mother, she's in bed, she's struggling, she's kind of detached, you say later now we would know it's depression, years then maybe nobody really knows what's wrong with her, but what past sins does June's mother struggle to forgive herself of? What has happened to her in the past?
Well, if I tell you that, I'm going to tell you the story. You know, that's what the readers are going to find out. One thing is there is a daughter that dies. That's what forces the McDonald's to really decide to leave Glasgow. They have one that's between Mary and June. There's a daughter named Helen. And Helen's always been a weak child. Now, we know from the beginning of the story, there's a chapter called The Gypsy Visits, and that's in the very first chapters, that Kathy also lost an infant, a newborn. She lost a newborn, and her mother, Granny B, are talking, and Granny B's telling her, you have to let it go. You can't think of the past. And then the next chapter up, we have some problems, and then we find out that Helen dies. And I can't even read that at book reads because I start crying. When she's holding Helen and Helen dies. And Helen's about 3 when she dies. And so the family, so we think of sorrow, you know, the sorrow that the mother has already lost 2 children. And she just, you know, I mean, really, who really went to therapy then? Therapy, things have changed so much for the better in many ways. No matter what anybody says about the world, there are some really good things that have changed. And so she just had to go and, you know, go to church, talk to the priest if she wanted to, like that. There's she comes from the country where she's alone, meaning she has no more relatives or parents, and she's got a rather brutal husband. You know, he's definitely the villain in the story. And she's got no one to talk to about her grief. She talks to Mrs. G about it because Mrs. G says, yeah, all her family, her husband, her sons were all hung, you know, when the Nazis came in.
Ooh.
And so Mrs. G is able to tell her, I know what sorrow is. And she shows her a photograph of her family, and they sit there and they look, and then Kathy opens up and says, "Yeah, my daughter died, and I lost a baby," and Mrs. G tells her, "But there's something else that you don't want to talk about," and that's what readers have to find out. Why can't Kathy? What else is there that Kathy just can't talk about? Her parents thought that. Oh, go ahead.
No. You said her parents thought.
Well, her parents thought that Jimmy was a good match for her. He's 12 years older. You've got this really cute little blonde, blue-eyed, pretty woman marrying this not very good-looking, older, hard-working. They say, well, he's a hard worker. You should take him. So she married a man because her parents thought that would curb her. She was getting a little, independent. And they said, oh, no, you should marry this man. And so Kathy's just not happy, In a marriage, she doesn't love him, and she's children that have died, and she's alone.
It's sad when I'm listening to you, and I could think some things my grandmother would tell me. My grandmother said years when she grew up my grandmother was born in 1921, and she said, you were married as a woman at 18, and you had kids by 21, or people wondered what's wrong with you. And that's shocking to me. Now, if you get married at 18, people are like, what's wrong with you? In a totally different way. Not like, why aren't you married? But why are you getting married? Are you crazy? It's totally different now. But she said, oh, no. And she said, you stuck it out. You stuck it out. I don't care what was going on.
You did not divorce.
No, I don't care what happened. And so people thought marriages were better back then. And then things that we know happen today, child abuse, incest, domestic violence, that went on, but nobody talked about it. So we thought things were better back then because people just hid it. They didn't talk about it. All this stuff that's out here now was going on. It was hidden. Everything going on now, we think the world's crazy. It was going on then. People just hid it. Now, why is the father? Why is he a hard man? We all. I believe we all come from love. Something happens to us that makes us become the way we are. Why is the father a hard man? What makes him hard? I know you said he's a hard worker. Is his job demanding? What makes him go down that path?
Well, why I decided that is in the beginning of the story when she has the last baby and she wants to name it June, and he says, no way, my child will never be named a bloody pagan name. What's wrong with you? Name it Elizabeth after my mother. Well, there's a very short, brief period, and actually my editor thought we didn't need to go into it, but he comes from a very dour family, mother, father. You know that picture? Oh, God. When the famous artist where the farmers are just looking out the camera.
Oh,
so
yes.
That's Jimmy's parents.
Oh.
So he comes
oh,
from,
my God.
Sometimes people, I'm not against religion at all, but sometimes people are in a religion and they take it so bloody serious that there's no joy in it.
Yeah.
There's no sense. I like to think of any spiritual participation and action and thought has a joyfulness to it. Mm-hmm. And so his parents are like that. And you have to remember back in certain countries, especially, alcoholism was just so accepted and huge. I mean, more houses had problems with alcohol, with the men coming home, spending their money, beating their wives, beating their kids. It was accepted. It was actually like the norm. And so he's an alcoholic, and he's not a very happy person either.
Oh, my goodness. Now, do any of the girls, since Audie had so many daughters, but do any of the girls stand up to their father?
Oh, yeah.
To be,
Annie, the eldest, she's rather stoic. She does what she's supposed to do. She's not a particular pretty girl, certainly not like Maggie. and she does what she has to do, and she has ways. All the girls find ways to go around their father to protect the youngest and just to protect themselves. Like they hide. They have little secrets. They say, well, don't tell Daddy we're doing this. So they find ways to get around him. There's one chapter where Jimmy goes crazy, and he just is beating on, the kids and yelling and stuff. He finds June's tarot cards that Mrs. G had given her, and he just takes them and is screaming and throws them in the bin in the back to the fire. And the girls talk about poisoning him. Where will they put it? Mary says, we'll get a bat and we'll beat him. and Annie says, poison. We'll put poison in his tea. So the girls do think of how to get rid of their father. And as the story goes on, and the girls, they start out as little girls, and then they become teenagers. A little later, Annie's already, by the time we get to the end of the story, Annie's already out of high school, a couple of years, and Maggie is just out of high school. So we look at the family and how it changes over the course of time. There is one scene, I don't want to give too much away, but there is one scene where where Jimmy is beating on June, and Annie just goes in and just takes him on. She just takes him on. And she's a little thing. She's a little petite thing.
So he's brutal. He's brutal. He's brutal like for years. He doesn't even think about changing. He just terrorizes his family for years.
Oh, he does not change, no.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's... I think
and
that is...
about Mr. Power.
I think
the sisters stick together.
Yeah, that's tragic when a person goes through so much and they never get the lessons and they never change. Sometimes they just go deeper and deeper into the woods. It's just sad. Now, is June the youngest of the girls, and in what ways is she like her mother, and in what ways is she like her father?
I do want to say this, though, so readers don't think they're reading this horrible story. There's a lot of humor in it, too. When the girls get together and they start laughing and they start looking at boyfriends, and so there's a lot of sisterness in it. It's a mother-daughter story, and there is very humorous times. So I've had people say, "Oh my God, I was mad, I was sad, I was laughing." Every chapter there was a different emotional reaction to it. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
How is June like her? I know your comedy, and you can hear it through your interview. That, of course, is going to make its way into what you write. In what ways is June like her mother, and in what ways is she like her father?
Well, June physically will look more like her mother, except for being a pale blonde that her mother is. She's got the red hair, and I think like her father, there's that you're not going to tell me what to do. There's a strength there that she will not be dominated. She will find a way to get out of it. She will find a way to get around him or over him or ignore him. So she has that part of her that has that strength. Like her mother, you'll learn in the story that her mother has had some experiences, some insights that it fits June's visions. So I would have to say that June is really more uniquely herself of all her sisters. Like Annie looks like her father more, and she's certainly not a weakling like her mother. She's also got that father determination. And Maggie is like Kathy when she was younger, up, more optimistic, looking forward to life. And poor Mary, I think she's heading definitely for depression.
Oh.
Just everything about her is pointing out to this is not a good situation.
Now, without giving the story, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Without giving the story away, I wanted to ask, and I don't know how you can answer this, probably not because you might get the story away, but June, she has this gift of clairvoyance. Oh, before I ask you this question, what made June say, oh, there's something different about me, or I have a gift of insight or clairvoyance? Did she have an experience? What made her even go down that road?
Well, the first time, we first see it when she's just almost 6 months old. She's just a tiny baby. And her sister, Helen, her sister Helen's crying, and the baby leans forward and puts her hand. Well, first of all, the gypsy comes here. There's a part, and the gypsy says, "I see that one. She's got faith. She knows things that people don't know." And so the gypsy makes that prediction when Kathy's holding June as a baby. She comes to the door. The old gypsy comes and knocks on doors. She's trying to, earn some coins. And then when Kathy goes in, Helen has another earache. She's always sick. And June leans forward and puts her hand on her ear, on her sister's ear. And Granny B says, she has something. She seems to be able to comfort her sister. So we know from the beginning, the first 3 chapters, that there's something going on with June. And then on the plane ride over to America, she points at a book her father is saying, "Oh, look at the boat. Did the man die on the boat? Is he in the water?" And Jimmy says, "Oh, shut up," and slaps her leg. "Just be quiet and listen to the story." So we oh, God, it's a long flight. And so the readers know there's something there, and it just grows. Mrs. G comes. Her sisters tell her you're nuts. They tell her she's crazy, but they do it in they do it in little girl ways. And she'll say things like, if somebody dies back home and they get a letter or something, she'll say, "They're here. Can you see them?" And the sisters are like, "You're crazy, but where is he?" Like that, So we know early in the story something different about
that she has this. You know what? And it kind of, don't want to give it away to the reader, but the story has, to me, like a beautiful release for the mother. So you build it up with this tension and this humor in it, but it comes to this good ending now. So is she able to, and this is a question you probably may say I can't answer because you get a story away, is she able to use her abilities to help her family to heal? And it's odd you said her father never changed, and maybe she could use her abilities to help him see something coming, and you better change. And he sees how she's right, and so many times he's right, and he thinks, you know what, I better change. But is she able to use her abilities to help her family to heal?
It is a story of reconciliation and acceptance. It really is a story about mother-daughters and how do they weather a difficult life, stick it together, and how do they finally come to a place where they reconciliate their differences, and accept each other. So in what you're saying, there is an acceptance. And in the acceptance, in any acceptance, when you finally listen to somebody, there is a healing. When you finally stop and open up your ears, like Judge Judy says, you've got 2 ears, use them, and really see a person for what's going on with them outside of your preconceived ideas of what they should do or why they're doing it. There is a particular kind of healing that goes on with acceptance. You see it. And so to answer that, yes, she is the catalyst to the family healing.
Oh, see, and then that's when you look at, because a lot of people would look at her clairvoyant gift almost like watching a circus. And so it's good when you see this gift is used to actually help people to release them from something, to help their healing. That is, I just think that's beautiful that you work that way into the story, and instead of making it like this circus, like, oh, look what she can do. So I think that's a good thing in the Sky in June. Now, how soon after you wrote the Sky in June did you start writing City of Redemption? So we're kind of going to this healing. How soon after you put that book down and finished it did you begin writing on the City of Redemption?
5 years.
Whoa.
Probably 5 years. I had no intention. I actually started because so many readers wanted the sequel to The Sky in June. I kept getting emails or people saying it on reviews that they would give, Amazon, Goodreads, everybody says, now what? And I went down to L.A. to put a stage play on of The Sky in June. I took particular characters and actors down there signed up for the play and stuff. And in that, I met a young Scottish actor. And she said, I love this part, but I can't play Kathy because, I don't know if I could age as she ages over the years. Would you write a screenplay just for me? Like, she took The Sky in June to her agent and said, I really would like to, do this. And they had decided not to. So I said, yes, sure. I talked to her on the phone. What do you think? What do you want? And she agreed it'd be good to do something during kind of the summer of love. The 60s was such a hot, memorable time. It was a huge time. We've got the Black Panthers in there. We've got drugs, sex, rock and roll. And she loved the idea. Well, I had just began to write. I just started writing it. And my eldest sister, who was also my best friend, died unexpectedly within a day.
Oh.
And I could not do anything. I was paralyzed in grief. I'd never, you get to an age where people die and you have grief. I was paralyzed. And so during the year that I took off, when I got back to the actress, she had already moved on. She had moved on to other stuff. And that's how it is in LA, in Hollywood, they move on. But I was already had the story in my mind, so I started writing it. And actually it was great. I collected family and friends, and I had them come over and they read the screenplay. And then the same thing, I thought, well, you know what? I got the screenplay. I'll make it a book. So I did. And I loved it. I was listening to all the great 60s music and playing music as I was writing. Like The Sky in June, I would do all the dialogue out loud. And then that one, I just blasting my music as I was writing.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, my goodness. I like to write with music in the background as well. Can you give us a synopsis of City of Redemption and then talk to us a little bit more about Ms. Liz?
Oh, Ms. Liz, yeah. And Tony, who is, she's a Black Panther woman, and she's studying to become a lawyer. Well, okay, yes, about Liz. I love Tony. I love them both. So, City of Redemption, when flower power erupts into firepower, and you get Liz, who somehow has been condemned and is involved in Scotland. It actually opens up with Liz in prison in the United States. And then we go back to Glasgow. This actress wanted to do it, Scottish. So you go back to Glasgow. And Liz is very self-absorbed. She's young. She had a baby at 15, 16. She's married. She spends money. She just wants to go out and have a good time. And so her young son, Patrick, is 8. He goes missing. He gets kidnapped. They later find him. He's murdered. So that's in the beginning of the story. So I don't have to worry about people giving anything away. And her community condemns her. She wasn't watching him. And she lied. She lied to her husband. Oh, he went to a friend's house. He'll be home later, because she was so worried, like, where did he go? So she kept an investigation. Hours later, they went to the police department. And so she comes, a broken woman. She comes to San Francisco. This little man, a sailor, reads her ruined stones in a pub, and she's drinking a lot. And he says, you have to leave this place, and you're going to go to this place. You're going to pick San Francisco, and you're going to go there. So she comes at the height of summer of love. And she moves in. She goes to an area, and she meets a commune. She moves in with a commune of really characters. We've got Ricky, the drug dealer, who changes women like he changes his tie-dye T-shirt. And you've got the gay guy, Mason, and he's just looking for love. He's a great guy. I love my gay people. They're just wonderful, and they can make wonderful characters. And you've got Tony, and what a powerhouse she is. And Bobby, her boyfriend, doesn't live there, but he's there a lot. So she meets this group, and she becomes embroiled in a plot to bring down the Black Panthers. And there's a snitch. And there's, so I don't know if anybody knows the history, how the FBI went out to ruin the Black Panthers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I came of age during the 60s in San Francisco. And so I think even by nature I'm a little bit rebellious, little bit, a lot. So I also put some of the history in there. So again, it's a historical. These are the things that actually happened then. Now, some of it is fiction, but Tony and Bobby have a really beautiful love relationship. They're in love. They want to get married, but Tony says, "No, let me finish my, she's becoming a lawyer. Let me finish school first." And you've got Sam, who's a Vietnam vet, and he's out to change the world through kumbaya, love, and Tony and Sam are good friends. And you got Liz there, and Liz just trying to deal with her grief of her son, the horrid thing that happened to her son. And pretty soon she's like, who do you choose? Do you choose your grief, or do you choose saving, which she considers now her family? This community is her family. Mm-hmm. And she has to take some steps. Go ahead.
No, your characters. I love your characters. Oh, my goodness. I love your characters.
Thank you.
Your characters are just amazing. What have readers been saying? Your books, your characters, and the way you describe them. What have readers been saying about City of Redemption?
Well, as an author yourself, that we really learn a lot from our readers. We learn what is working and what's not working. So if you're going to put your work out there, you better have some tough skin. That's all I'm going to tell all the budding writers. When you put it out there, you have to decide. I took this off of a film critic. You have to decide if any review helps your art, and if it's just somebody spouting off, forget about it. Readers love the dialogue in all my books. They love the characters. More than anything, they talk about the characters, the way they talk. They really relate to a character. They'll pick a character and they say, oh, my God, I've been there. I had that relationship with somebody like Ricky. I mean, girl, if you live long enough, who has not had a cat in their life, right? And so I felt, they would say about Liz, I felt for Liz, but I was pissed at her. Like, why didn't she just stop this thing and do something? So there's a lot of mixed reactions to Liz. Sky and June, people talk about, oh, my God, I lived during that time, or I had sisters, or I had a father like that. People really relate to the Sky and June family, and they relate to where it's set. They love the Scottish culture and language in both novels. They laugh. When I go to book events and I read it in my Scottish dialogue, they love it. And readers talk about, there is one woman that presented it in college for her students to read, because she wanted them to read about immigration, the Sky and June. She wanted them to read about how it is to be an immigrant. And that was quite a feather in my cap to know that it was the book of this college class.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is, kudos to you for that. Kudos to you. But the way you describe your characters, I mean, if you're doing like any show or you're talking at a book event, your marketing piece to me, it would just be to start talking about your characters, because the way you describe them, you really bring them to life, and so that tells me that you have a deep connection to your characters. To see them come alive in the book. That said, as we're down to less than a minute, are you working on any other books, June? And if so, can you give us a glimpse into what you're working on now?
I really, really have to finish this Sky and June. If I get one more email pissed at me because they don't have the sequel, I am not. Other than the Sky and June, I did write another book based upon a client of mine that just passed last week. He said an angel visited him, and said that I have to write this book about communicating with spirits. As I said, I've been a medium for many years, and your readers can see I do paranormal investigations on YouTube videos, and I did not want to write that book. Again, I was done writing books except for the sequel, but I wrote it, and amazingly, because he kept saying his angel told me, PM'd me 100 times, and amazingly, the people that are so interested in near-death experience and communicating with spirits. That book actually has become, besides The Sky in June, that book has become my most popular book. It's amazing. I mean, I'm amazed. Because, there's so many books out there. It's like, well, what? Why should I write this book?
But you know what? It almost seems like death is like the great separator, although I don't think anything ends. But you want to talk to somebody that you used to talk to them, and now you can. And if somebody could help you make that connection, most people would, I think, would accept that.
In that book, I tell people how they can do it through a medium, a seance, a group thing, but I really support doing it yourself, and I tell people how you can do that.
Mm-hmm. And then also people want to know what's going to happen in the future. They want to know, should I take this job? Should I go in this relationship? Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to fail. So if somebody can see something I don't see, can you let me know if this relationship will work out or if I should just leave it alone? People want to know. But you know what, before we close, I want to ask you this question. When you've told people, if you've picked up, that you should maybe be in this relationship or not be in it, if somebody still wanted it, do they ever really listen?
No.
That's what I'm thinking. Even if you tell them this is not going to turn out well, if something in them wants to do it, it's like, I'm doing it anyway.
You got it.
Yeah.
Well, I say to people, well, what do you learn? So I turn it around. That's why in my first book I said it's so important how you ask the reader the question. Not, will I have love? Will it work out? Because you're right. Do they listen? No. I have clients.
Once you want to do something, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. You're so right.
Yes, once you want to do something, you're going to do it anyway. So even if you knew, it's not going to probably change your behavior in any way. Where can off-the-shelf listeners find you on social networks? How can they connect with you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on. Find it in my website where it says social media. I'm old, so I'm not as up with social stuff as some people. On Facebook, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram if I could ever figure it out. And they can just get in touch with me through all of that. YouTube. I just made another YouTube video. And so they can check it out there. I do have a video on how to use your telepathy on YouTube also. So they could just put in June Ahern and they could see me live, even with my blue hair. And, like that. Yeah,
well, June, we want to thank June Ahern for being with us here on Off the Shelf this morning. And some of her books include The Timeless Counselor, A Guide to a Successful Psychic Reading, City of Redemption, and The Sky in June. She was born in Glasgow, Scotland, which if you came in midway or at the end of the day's show, you can go back when the archives finish streaming and listen to it in its entirety. And she talks about Glasgow. And she also grew up in San Francisco. Please visit June Ahern online at JUNEAHERN.com. Again, that's JUNEAHERN.com. Thank you so much, June. Thank you to all of our off-the-shelf listeners. Remember, you are awesome. You are incredible. You are amazing. Go out and create a fabulous day for yourself. June, I'll shoot you an email when the show finishes streaming. Bye for now.
Bye.